Hello, and welcome to our second, or is it our third? Welcome to our Ask Trina Anything. And joining me today is Trina Paulus, who is
Hi,
the author
everybody.
of Hope for the Flowers. And we go out live every Monday at this time. It's a way that we feel that we can touch bases with, communicate, and grow the community of all of those people who have read Hope for the Flowers and would like to know a little bit more. So, well, hi, Trina. How are you today?
I'm walking, Scott. That's my standard answer. Okay, and I'm very grateful for that at 91, that I still can. So
That's absolutely terrific. As am I. So we're both in good shape in terms of that. Well, today we've got a couple of special things planned. There are a few questions that we have from your Facebook community, and we'll talk a little bit more about how you can join Facebook if you haven't already joined the Hope Revolution group.
it's the Hope for the Flowers revolution, Scott.
It's Hope for the Flowers
The
Revolution.
whole thing is, I think probably someone else has Hope Revolution just by itself. We have
Well,
Hope for the Flowers revolution.
and we also have a few photographs and pictures to share that have stories in and of themselves. So, is there anything that you'd like to say beforehand before we get into the business at hand, Trina?
Well, we consider this, Scott and I consider this kind of the prologue to whatever we do. And I just want to know that what we're doing, I'm aware that I have not paid enough attention to the Hope for the Flowers Revolution group as it keeps growing and growing and growing. And I'm very grateful to each of you who join us and the people on the YouTube channel too. It's amazing to me since I'm not paying a lot of attention to it, but we've decided we're going to go ahead with these 15 minutes a week and see where it takes us. And so we're eager for your questions and your ideas about series that might happen. And the two ideas about series that I thought about are what it's like to be able to speak from 10 different decades. I realize that I'll be 92 in a month. And goodness, that means that I'm speaking from the 30s, 40s, and on up to now. And and just to share that, if that's of interest to people, we don't have to be selling anything, but just about how a life has evolved. One human life in the United States has evolved from Cleveland, Ohio, to what I've done in Egypt and elsewhere, and the arts and the Hope for the Flowers, so that whole business. And so that's one idea. And then the other is the question of activism, how this religious Catholic girl from Middle America become such an activist and uh, and an outlier in many respects. Oh, and here I am, Scott. Thank you for bringing this up. The one on the right almost looks like a headless person, don't you think? That's me from the back walking in the parade this week. That's I made the whole thing this week. I did about the whole 2 miles, and there were thousands of people watching, and probably 1,000 of us in the parade. But this is Aging in Montclair group, until most of them were in cars. I'm one of the few ones that walked, and I did better than last year, Scott, and everybody. Last year, after 2/3 through, I took a ride, and this year I could do the whole thing, which I'm very glad about. So
Could
I'm very
you talk a little bit more about the hat and what that's all about?
well. I hope to bring the hat with me one of these days, but that one in the back says 91 and grateful I can do it. So that's what that streamer says. And the ones in the front, one is at AIM, Aging in Montclair. That's a group I belong to. And then on the other side, it is New Jersey Peace Action, which is a group I've belonged to for 35, 40 years already. I've been here in Montclair for 45 years. I've been in New Jersey longer than that. And I grew up in Cleveland Heights, Ohio.
And what's that hat underneath your hat, the green one?
Oh, they took that too early in the game. I do have that one right here. This is an activist cap, baseball cap. It has a bunch of buttons on it. One nation under fraud, which a lot of us think might be the case right now. More jobs, not war. Justice, not war. Who counts the votes? That's what counts. Who counts the votes? And then here's the one that was one of my very favorites right there. February 15th, 2003.
And what's that all about?
Well, that was the big march in New York City. There were marches all over the world. Millions of people came out because it was pretty clear that we were going to invade Iraq, which we did do on the 19th of March. And we were getting ready for that. And President Bush said, "This is what my father wants." And he meant his father in heaven wanted him to do this. And that was the reason he gave for it. Because we obviously know there were no weapons of mass destruction and there were a lot of lies attached. We know that now. But some of us knew it before that, and we were out on the streets. And that was the big protest. People came in from Cleveland and stayed in my house. 6 young people came in and stayed on my floor. And we went into New York that day. And we were not supposed to march. We were supposed to be on the one street by the UN. But more than a million of us. So we spilled out into all the streets in New York, one next to another, way out. And the police came by and our horses tried to keep pushing us onto the sidewalks. It was a ridiculous scene that we weren't allowed to protest. And a lot of signs said, "No war for oil." So anyhow,
So,
right behind me is one I did in the original of this with the black and white hands. I did in 1963 for the first civil rights march in Cincinnati. 30,000 people showed up in 1963. And I was teaching an art class, and we cut out white pieces of paper and put them on black cardboards and carried it up there. The word "together" was not there. I added that just a couple of years ago when the whole issue of race came up again so strongly in this country. And that's a sign I made for people's front yards.
and you are actually even carrying that sign in the parade, aren't you?
That's right. I carried that one. That's the one I carried. This was before the parade. Somebody insisted taking my pictures before I was fully dressed and ready, because I did take my hat. I did take this hat off for the parade.
Yes.
I went 2 hats. And I had this one in case it started raining. I didn't want my nice paper hat with all the paper stuff to get all wet. So I had a rain plan.
So I have a question for you, Trina. Are you ready to answer some of your viewer questions?
Sure. Let's try. Let's see
Okay,
what
let's see how this works. Okay, Linda asks, this is from the website, and have you read Hope for the Flowers? And she says, countless times since receiving it in 1992, and again today before giving it as a gift to a friend. Do you have a question for the author? Have you read Saint Teresa of Avila's Interior Castle? Your story reminds me of what she describes happening inside the fifth mansion of a person's soul. She writes about how silkworms become butterflies to explain the prayer of union.
Well, this is a pretty deep question if you go deep into it, but I do not remember reading that exactly, Linda. So if you would feel like putting that on my website, on the Hope for the Flowers Revolution site, I think that could be a contribution to everybody if you find that part again, and I should like to be reminded of it. I did always know that Hope for the Flowers from the time I was a child. But very well, Hope for the Flowers did not exist as a book at that time. But people kept dying in my life, relatives, and I would make butterfly and a caterpillar and a cocoon were always symbol of resurrection for me. So I would make a picture of a caterpillar, a cocoon, and a butterfly, and usually write something like from the Mass of the Dead, the Catholic Mass of the Dead, which was life has changed, not taken away. And I would give it to the people who were mourning, being sad about the death of their loved one. And so that meant a lot to me always, because it's such a profound symbol of transformation and resurrection. And what I like about Hope for the Flowers is that you can take it in so many levels. And I'm thrilled that she takes it as a demonstration of the prayer of union, because that's a pretty high state. After you've gone through meditation and a lot of other actions in the dark night of the soul, you come to the prayer of union, where you're just there with God. So I do admire St. Teresa of Avila. She was a Carmelite. That means a very strict order. And she wanted to reform it. It started to get away from its original mission. And so she ended up doing a lot of traveling and founding new branches of it. And bless her heart, she got very active. Some of us get more active in our old age. It's the reverse of some people, but
Well, you've been enduring and you're getting more active all the time, aren't you, Trina?
and I don't know if all the time. Part of it wears out, but other parts of it still stay alive, right?
That's so
Hopefully
true.
until we die. Hopefully I'll die with my boots on. I hope so.
Well, here's a question from Tuesday. Have you read the book? Yes. Do you have a question for the author? Yes. Can you please make a sequel? I very much need a sequel. I started out as him, and now I have kids, and I need to be her as a mother and die. What happens to the children?
Oh boy, oh boy. Well, my sequels, I have two sequels. One is called Hope at the Edge, and the second one that's written is called Together We're a Genius. And it deals with the two kinds of children that they have, but it mostly deals with the second kind. Because if you remember the story, after the words the end, you turn the page and it says, or the beginning. And then you see all those caterpillars coming off the pillar that, in spite of the way they treated Stripe on his way down and didn't seem to listen and thought he was crazy, they decided about thinking about it that climbing wasn't such a good idea. And they came off and they did that transformation too. So what happens to those children? Well, they become real. Scott and you're Scott, but Stripe and Yellow discover them at a certain point in these sequels, and they come and they help with the whole regeneration of a piece of land and the bringing back of the rain and those good things. And then if I manage to get those done, but the problem is I can't draw anymore. My hand shakes, and I'm working to get that healed. And I have a bunch of technological problems in my computer. So I need some real Mac Photoshop expert who knows the old Mac stuff, the old Photoshop stuff, and you can even decide to help me reach out across the space and help me to get those things back available in a new format. Because what happens with the changes of both your computers and like Adobe Photoshop and InDesign, I no longer can handle all those changes. So I'm no longer good for them anymore. So I need help. Need lots of help.
Two things. You do have these sequels, and they are almost, they're in the 10-yard line.
They're written. They're just not fully illustrated. So maybe I have to get them published even not fully illustrated, just with the illustrations. But we have to get those up because they're in older programs.
And the second thing is, if I'm not mistaken, Trina, this is the first time you've publicly acknowledged and announced the existence of the two sequels, isn't it? I don't recall you.
I don't think I've ever said their names before.
So this is
sitting there in a manuscript form, as far as they are.
So those who tune in on a weekly basis, we won't mention it every week, but as we make progress with those two sequels, we'll go ahead and give you updates as to their progress, and we'll kind of go from there. Are you ready for the third question?
Sure. Do we have time? Yeah, about a minute, maybe.
So let's see this. How would you want the story to evolve in the present era? So how would you like Hope for the Flowers to evolve? And maybe you think you've answered it, but I bet you can say something.
The sequels do. They bring back a more climate-related situation. But if we have time to go further, if God gives me enough time and I can solve these problems, these present issues, I do have other ideas that I've done short drafts about, where we go into a place similar to the one humans have made, that's sort of devoid of all butterflies and of all pollinators and of everything is genetically engineered and all that kind of stuff. And so that brings it up to the present era very much, if I can get them finished. But they don't have a beginning and a middle and an end in a proper form yet. The others do. The other two books do. So they're ready to go in many ways, except they're not illustrated, finished. So I still feel God isn't finished with me yet here on earth. So, and I hope to, and I'm working with the handicaps I have, like not being able to write clearly or draw right now, but and not
But
being
I
able
do know,
not keeping up with technology either, Scott. Boy, oh boy.
my son admires you greatly because you are courageous when it comes to technology. You're willing to try things, and you very often succeed. So,
But we're
just
trying this, Scott. We're trying this right now. This is like a prelude to any series we come up with. And we're looking forward to the ideas that come from those watching.
yes.
We're just playing with this right now.
So,
And it's good to play with it, but it's not too serious because it's kind of scary otherwise for me.
well, so I appreciate you, and I appreciate that this is just an informal chat, that we're getting to know each other. We're getting to know the people in your community. And if they want to ask questions or connect with you, the way to do it for now is to go to hopefortheflowers.com, and then you can connect with Trina at that time, and we'll see what happens next week. How's that sound?
And you can put something on the Facebook program if you are on that. Hope for the
Oh,
Flowers.
absolutely. Please respond to this video on Facebook or on YouTube. Ask comments, ask questions, or place comments, and we'll be sure to read them absolutely and respond to them, and really look forward to that.
And thank you, Scott, and thank you everybody who happens to be watching. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.